Hello, it is Halloween 2021, and I actually get to wear the Orchestra Pop's Order of Dress today because I will be performing a partially Halloween themed orchestra concert later today. Because it is Halloween, I thought I would do an instructional video on the wind chimes. The modern wind chimes, in which the chimes themselves are made out of metal, are a descendant of the ancient wind chimes that during the early medieval era contributed to the myth of Sherwood Forest being haunted. I've decided to dedicate this video to two people. Person number one is Dr. Todd Meehan, who instructs percussion at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, because I know that this instrument haunts his dreams. But don't worry, Todd, there will be a fair amount of this video dedicated to ensuring that we learn how to make the wind chimes stop making sound, and I know that you will appreciate that. The second person to whom this video is dedicated is Shannon Fair, who is the Director of Music at Queen Elizabeth High School in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, because recently she did request that I make a video on how to keep the wind chimes from making extraneous noise while having to move them from one end of the stage to the other and back again during a performance. So, let's begin, shall we? First of all, the wind chimes are mounted on an arm that is mounted on a standard double braced cymbal stand. You'll notice that this particular arm, if I loosen this fitting here, I can actually adjust the wind chimes and move them out from the stand like this. I can have them fairly far away from the stand, or I can keep this loose and I can move them all the way back in so that they are close to the stand. If you're not dealing with a double braced stand that has legs spread as wide as this one, and you have a limited amount of real estate to work with on the floor and only a single brace stand, in the interest of stability and lower center of gravity, you will probably want to use your configure your arms so that the wind chimes stay as close to the center post of the stand as possible. So, first of all, playing the wind chimes. Generally, you will see one of three different types of notation when you are playing the wind chimes. Number one is that you will see some sort of a note, be it a half note or a whole note, and you will see from left to right on your page a squiggly line going from high to low. When that happens, you are going to play the instrument from high to low over the course of the duration of that note. Second type of notation you might see is when you see a squiggly line going from low to high, at which point you will play them from low to high over the course of the duration of that note. And the third one you'll see is you'll just see a note that has a sustain marking, the 3 slashes, or a tremolo marking where it's a TR with a squiggly line, or just a note, period, of a certain length, like a whole note or a brev or a half note or whatever, at which point you're just supposed to make sort of aleatoric and random sound as though the wind is playing the instrument. So I just sort of go back and forth like this. One important point to notice is that when I am playing the instrument, I'm playing it close to the top. The reason why I do that is because when I play it close to the top, you'll notice I'm not making the bars fly all over the place, whereas if I play it closer to the bottom, the bars keep swinging back and forth and making noise and making noise and making noise, and it makes them that much more difficult to silence. So, those are the three different types of wind chimes notation. Now to talk about making the wind chimes stop making noise. And I know that this is going to be Todd's favorite part of the video. It's probably going to be a lot of people's favorite part of the video, not just because they may or may not hate the wind chimes, but also because it is important to be able to silence percussion instruments at the right time. Now, you've probably already encountered in some sheet music that when you have a certain notation duration for crash cymbals or for tam-tam or for wind chimes or for triangle, it doesn't necessarily mean that that duration, if it's a quarter note or an eighth note or a dotted half note, is exactly as long as the sound should last. Which, if you're playing a string instrument or a wind instrument, or if you're singing, that is what the duration means. But with percussion, it's not necessarily what the duration means. You should always be ready to dampen the crash cymbals when they stop blending properly with the texture of what's happening in the room. Likewise with triangle, and likewise with this instrument. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to stop the instrument from making sound. So here we are. I just moved the wind chimes. Let's talk about a couple of ways of a couple of bad ways that I've seen, ineffective ways that I've seen people use for doing this. One of them is this. The instrument is making sound and they do this. I mean, it kind of works, except that you're still going to get some noise down there. And then, of course, when you put the instrument back to normal, it's going to make a whole bunch more noise. That is an ineffective way. This is another ineffective way. Very ineffective. There's a saying that perhaps you've heard before: every time a bell rings, an angel gets its wings. I have adapted that saying to apply to this instrument, and what I like to say is that every time a percussionist forcefully dampens a set of wind chimes, an angel succumbs to asphyxiation. And angels are nice people, so we don't want them to succumb to asphyxiation. So we're going to talk about a gentle way of dampening the wind chimes. I'm going to turn the instrument on a slight angle, and I'm going to play them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my arm, flatten out my arm, and put them against the instrument. I'm not going to push them a long ways. I'm just going to barely put my arm in contact with the instrument and then slowly pull it away. That is probably the most effective solution. So once again, if I do that a little bit faster, nothing, no sound at all. I'm just trying to keep my arm as straight as possible. I have a relatively smooth suit jacket on, which is probably what you'll be doing if you perform. You'll have something that's relatively smooth. If you have a big bulky winter coat, it might be a little bit harder, but generally we don't have to perform in orchestra concerts with big bulky winter coats on, although it has been known to happen up here in Canada, but usually not the case. So in any case, there is my solution for dampening wind chimes. Now, to cater to Shannon Fair's reason for having requested this video, I want to talk about how to move the wind chimes effectively from one end of the stage to the other. Once again, the upturned solution is something that percussionists will often use, and then they'll walk the wind chimes over to one end of the stage and back again. How well did that work? Not particularly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use sort of an extended version of what I did before, where the wind chimes are ringing and then I dampen them like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep my sleeve against the wind chimes while I pick them up and slowly walk them over to where I need them to be next, and then set them down, and then very slowly and gingerly bring my arm away from them. You may find that they might still make a tiny little bit of noise, but it's still better than it would be otherwise. So for example, now I'll move them back again, make a noise. I'm just going to gently place my arm, pick up the stand, move them over. It's also a really good idea to try to not trip over the stand as you're moving them. Set them down, and then very slowly bring your arm away from the instrument. It wasn't absolutely perfect, but it's better than this solution, and it's better than this solution. Definitely the best possible solution. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're just trying to make as little extraneous noise as you can. Just like when you flick the timpani in order to try to test your pitch with your ear down close to the drum, you're trying to do so in such a way that the audience either doesn't hear you at all or hears you as little as possible. Any reasonable conductor is going to understand that you're doing the best possible job you possibly can of not interfering with the soundscape of the piece that you are performing. In any case, that's a little bit about the wind chimes, how to play them, given the notation you may or may not have on your page, how to shut them up, and how to shut them up while transporting them. Thank you for watching. Have a lovely day.